Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Tonight we are going to make some Swedish meatballs with some boiled potatoes and a gravy and Brussels sprouts and bacon. And then I've got some rolls that we're going to pop in the oven. So let's start. I'm going to take this one potato right here. We're going to cut the skin off. We're going to dice it up and we're going to boil it because for the Swedish meatballs, potato is one of my secret ingredients for my binder on it. And you just need about one potato diced up, or like a big scoop of mashed potatoes. But the starchiness in the potato is like what makes Swedish meatballs so delicious. They're very different from an Italian meatball, or they're just very savory, have a nice onion flavor. And I make mine with pork, which I think is so much better than like ground beef. Most of the times you find they're made of ground beef and it's just not the right flavor. So I'm going to dice this potato up pretty small, and I'm going to throw it in my little pot that I have boiling right here because I want it to get pretty soft pretty quick so I can put it in my meatball base. Here we go. And so I'm using 2 pounds of meat. I probably won't use all of these potatoes, but we'll see once they get there and how soft they get. Okay, and then the next part of I think I missed a potato. There we go. Is we're going to dice up an onion and we're going to saute it. And when I say dice, I mean we are going to mince it up really small. And we're going to saute it until those bits get nice and caramelized. And these are also going to go into our meatball. So you have like that potato, the onion, and then it's just salt and pepper, bread and egg. And they make the most delicious meatballs ever. These are what we always grew up having on our Swedish smorgasbord at Christmas time. And it was our favorite. I'm going to turn my burner on right here. And we are going to put some butter in. I'm going to have it melt up, but we're going to saute our onions with this. So I'm going to put in about 2 tablespoons of butter. We'll let that melt. And then I have my one big Valdalia, or this is a yellow onion. You use Valdalia or sweet onion. And I'm going to mince this guy up pretty small because you don't want to have big onion chunks in your meatball. So I'm going to do really fine slits, and then we'll cut it up, and then I'll go back over it again with my blade to make them even smaller. But this onion is crucial, but you got to saute it up. You can't leave it raw because it will just be too pungent in its flavor. And then I do have my oven preheated to 375 because we're going to throw our rolls in there that I have proofing. I just made a quick 1 hour sourdough yeast roll, or 1.5 hour sourdough yeast roll. So it uses sourdough discard and then some yeast to it. So you'll get some of the benefits of sourdough and a little bit of the taste, but not all the weight that you need of a typical sourdough roll. So I get these guys nice and small. And then I'm going to go back over. You could also use one of those food choppers for this, or even a food processor to kind of make like an onion paste if you wanted to. But we're just going to keep chopping them up nice and fine. And you might think, oh, this is a lot of onion. But growing up, I was always taught that you used 1 onion per pound of meat. And since this was a pretty big onion, I figured it counted as like the same as 2 smaller ones. But lots of onions, and then you do 1 slice of bread per pound of meat, 1 egg per pound of meat, and then about a half a potato mashed up per pound of meat. Now at Christmas time when I make these, well, growing up when we made them for my big family, we'd be making like 8 pounds of meatballs, which is like 200 meatballs, and they'd go like crazy. Here we go. And these, I know like IKEA or IKEA, however they say it here, they sell the Swedish meatballs and they're pretty good, but nothing beats this recipe. This is my mom's recipe, which is her mom's, and you just can't beat it. It's so good. And as I said, I'm mincing these onions up fairly small because you want them nice and small and have them saute up because you just don't want any big chunks. Okay, we've got a pretty good mincing on it. My mom would probably be like, mince it more, mince it more. I was always in charge of mincing. But this is good enough. I'm gonna add these all in here. And then I'm gonna give them a nice stir in that butter. And we're gonna cook them until they're all like a golden brownish, where they've caramelized up and they're very tender. And all that yummy flavor in it. So I have mine over about a 7 on my, so like a medium high, and then I'll turn it down as needed. But I want to make sure they all get coated up. And then I have my water boiling right here. I've just got these little itty bitty baby potatoes that we're going to be having. I'm going to be making a gravy because it's like a meatball gravy that, you know, when you have Swedish meatballs, I love the gravy that it comes with. But this also goes well with that.
You know, question. They notice you don't really use food processors and you do a lot of stuff manually. Do you prefer it that way?
Yes, because I hate cleaning a food processor. It also takes up so much real estate in the dishwasher. And when you have a big family, that dishwasher is prime space. So yes, I'm not a big fan of them. Not if I'm doing a whole bunch of things or I need a really fine paste, I will use it. But I think it's easier for the smaller things to do it just by hand. It just goes easier. Let's grab my rolls here. So these are my sourdough rolls. Take off this thing. These are like food covers that you can get. They look like shower curtains. They're bowl covers, but they are great for doing like the rising process. So these are my sourdough yeast rolls, and we are going to brush them with a little bit of melted butter here. So let me got another one of these little teeny tiny containers. These are great for doing like a quick melt. And I'm going to put a little bit of honey in it. So it's kind of like, you know, one of those little steakhouses have those honey yeast rolls that are so good. Well, we're essentially going to do that right now. O'Charlie's. I think I feel like there's a couple that do it. Let me do my small burner here. And let me grab my honey. We're kind of running around crazy today because this is where I keep all of my liquids. Nope, that's not my honey either. There it is. Oh, it's up here. Go through there. I have like a liquid container or cabinet for all my liquid seasoning. But we went around. I have my niece here, which is the same age as my oldest daughter. And so we took them out to the mall today. We did Dave and Buster's. We went to the aquarium restaurant. And then, you know, of course, the girls had to shop. And we got home. And then it was funny. She was about to fly back, but her flight got canceled. So we had to rebook a flight for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So I was like, oh, we got to get everything ready real quick. We don't have much time. But I've kind of been like going around crazy just with so much stuff to do today. I picked the girls up they were at like a week-long camp at, they took like a college class and they did trial law. They both came out of it saying they didn't think they wanted to be lawyers when they got older. And I'm like, I could see that. Okay, I've got about 2 tablespoons of butter in here. We're going to add about a tablespoon of honey. You don't need too much. Honey's a little goes a long way with it. But we'll brush it over before we bake them, and we'll brush it at the end. It gives you kind of that flavor to it. Okay, got this guy. And then we're just going to do it until the honey melts. You don't want to cook your honey too long in there because then it can crystallize and then you'll have a crunch on it. But I'm just going to do it until my butter is melted. And then we'll brush this over. This will also give our rolls kind of a deep brown color when it comes out. So the honey, the sugar in it will brown up much faster than the rest of the roll. So it's not going to be burnt, but it will be a darker brown, like a mahogany. For it, but that will give you just a nice flavor on it. Because if you were to bake these rolls up without brushing anything on the top, they'll be really blonde. And then you could always do an egg wash or a, like a milk wash on it. But the honey butter gives it such good flavor, and it gives it a nice, really kind of darker brown color to it. So we're gonna brush these guys. And I really only had these rising for like an hour, like max making it. So it's one of those things that they kind of puff up pretty quickly, and you get like the benefits of both sourdough and the yeast in it. They're so good. Okay. So we'll save the rest of this honey butter for it. I'm going to turn on my warmer. That way that will keep that butter nice and melted. And we're going to go pop these in the oven real quick. Now, I have it set at 375, and we're going to start out for about 25 minutes, and we'll see. Sometimes they need a little bit more depending on how unevenly I rolled them out, but these look pretty good. I'm going to put them on the top, and we're going to let them bake at 375. So I'm going to put my timer for 25 minutes to check on them, make sure they're going well. We'll be also popping our Swedish meatballs in there, so I'll also be able to keep tabs on them when we get to that. Okay, let's get our onions stirred up. They're starting to get a little brown here, which is going to be delicious. And those onions, you've got to caramelize them up, because otherwise their flavor will be that onion flavor will be too strong. So caramelizing mellows the flavor up, and it just makes that savoriness just wonderful with it.
You have a question? Where do you typically get your groceries?
I shop at a variety of different stores, but Costco, Aldi's, and Publix are my main ones that I go to, and then occasionally throw in a Target. Go in there, but those are the ones that I mainly shop at. We're a big family, so Costco works really, really well for us, because it's our 7 plus my parents, so 9 people that you're feeding most days. So that kind of works well. And I've gotten I used to do for a while, I had it I did a big Costco haul one week, and then it was a Publix haul the next week. I find now I feel like I'm going to the store all the time sometimes, and I just had a big restock because we were gone for 2 weeks, which means we had absolutely nothing in our house. And that was both Costco and Aldi's, because Aldi's has a small selection but really great prices and really good produce. Costco has a really big selection, but you can't get all of your little stuff, your more specific ones. But I love their meat and fish selection at Costco. So I feel like you can't just live at one. Got to use them all. Okay, we're getting this lovely little browning on it. I'm going to check my potatoes here. Let me grab a spoon and a fork. Let me grab a bigger fork. And I'm just going to pull them up. My hope is that they are ready to kind of mash up. And they're getting there, which is good, because we're going to just strain them and then kind of give them a little mash. And that's going to be the base in our meatballs. Okay, let me grab my little strainer here. I'm actually going to use this guy for that one, because my other one, I feel like it's just going to fall all the way through. I once did orzo pasta is so fine, and I once used one of my bigger colanders for orzo pasta, and I lost part of it. I'm going to put a little bit of butter in here. That's just going to help it mash up a little bit nicer. And then I'm just going to do a simple mash with my fork. If you already have leftover mashed potatoes, this works great for it. But it's really easy to kind of mash up one potato. It's not too hard. Okay. There we go. See how it just kind of whips up? And this is going to be like a binder in my potatoes, but it adds such a nice flavor to the meatball. It's wonderful. Okay, we've got my onions. Beautiful. So you see how my onions are nice and brown? You want to cook them to where they're nice and brown and they're all translucent. That way they're going to add great flavor. I'm going to push this in here. I've got 2 pounds of ground pork in here. So I opened up 2 packages of ground pork, and you want to use ground pork. You can use beef, but the recipe, it just doesn't taste the right. Pork is the best. I guess originally these Swedish meatballs were made with veal, and I find that pork tastes closer to veal than like ground beef. We're going to add in our mashed potato here. And then I'm going to just kind of push it here because this is the part where it's going to be a little bit hot. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a mix up to start kind of cooling it down so that when I get my hands in there, it won't be super hot. If you have lots of time at home, you could always let everything sit. But I'm a person who, once I get going with cooking, I go. So now I'm just going to kind of make a little bit of a well. And then I have my 2 slices of bread. Just like when I make my Swedish meatballs, we are going to soak the bread in a little bit of cream.
In your non-Swedish.
Yes, I mean when I make my when I make my Italian any other meatballs, I make a panade base, which is an egg, bread, and milk base. And I think that gives you a much more tender meatball than a dry one. But you don't want it to be super soaking wet. You just kind of make it nice and soggy, but it doesn't have to be overly, like you don't want it dripping with it because then your mixture will be too thin. So just enough to make it soggy where it will turn into a paste, but not a runny paste. So it's about maybe 1/4 cup of cream. You can use milk. You'd need a little bit less with milk, but I find cream just gives it a nicer flavor and texture. So here are my 2 pieces of bread. And again, I use 1 piece of bread per pound of meat. And I'm just going to give it a quick little smush here. Now, making meatballs is nothing pretty. So you got to get in with your hands. We're going to use 2 eggs, 1 egg per pound. These, the bread, the potatoes, and the egg are like going to be the base thing. I'm going to give my hands a quick rinse. And then we're going to add in our salt and our pepper. Now with these, you gotta make sure you add enough because once you've done it, you can't add any more. I'm going to do about a teaspoon of ground black pepper. This is a new jar, so it's not popping out well. And then I'm going to use garlic salt. And you're going to want about a tablespoon because we've got to season up these whole 2 pounds of meat. So I'm going to add in about a tablespoon. Now, growing up, I think my grandma would tell me that when her mother made these, she would literally take the raw meat and try it to see if it well seasoned. My grandma was always like, I pop it in the microwave and taste it if it's well seasoned. I just eyeball it and hope I've done it right. I've made them enough that I feel like I've mastered it over the years, but you can always take a little piece out. You could fry it up and taste it, or you can pop it in the microwave and taste it. Now, microwave is not going to give you the right texture, but you'll be able to see if you've got it seasoned enough. Because these are meatballs, I make the gravy with it, but they also can be eaten standalone. I'm going to bake mine in the oven, but you can also just pan fry them if you want to. Now, we always made so many of them as a kid growing up for our family that we always baked them in the oven, and then we'd make them ahead of time, and then we would fry them off when it came time to like reheat them. Just put it in a pan with some butter, and they're delicious.
You have a question? Was it just 1 potato?
Yes, 1 potato for it. So like you could use, for 2 pounds of meat, otherwise like a half a potato for 1 pound of meat. And if you don't have, if you already have like mashed potatoes at home or baked potato that you can mash up, that works well too. It's about, I want to say like a third cup, maybe a little bit more.
You have questions? Is this recipe posted anywhere?
We will post the videos. So we always post the videos of all of our lives on the link on our page. And that's probably the best way to be able to recreate it. Occasionally I do send out like some freebie recipe cards, but most of my recipe cards I put in our membership because they do take me time to make versus me just cooking my family dinner. Okay, so we've got our mixture here. And I've essentially, my technique for mixing it is you just squeeze it through your fingers. And that it's going to allow you to not have any, it's going to make it a homogeneous mixture where they're all combined together as one. And then we will start kind of rolling them out into balls. I just mix with one hand because then I have a hand that's clean. I'm going to grab myself a baking sheet here. I've got my, what I call my storage oven and my baking oven. So let's get my storage oven working. And these I will be using two hands. Now, I'm not going to care so much about whether my meatballs are perfectly smooth balls. But if you really care about having like a really perfect presentation, you could put get a little bit of oil in a bowl, olive oil, whatever oil, and then you could just periodically dip your fingers in it, and that will allow the meat to not stick on you at all, and it will give you perfectly smooth balls. Now these are turning out fairly nicely, and I did put butter in the potatoes and on the onions, so there's a little bit of oil in here that helps with that.
You have a question? Do you do lives during the school year?
Yes. So I typically do we do 1 to 2 lives. We try to aim for 2, like lunch and dinner or breakfast and dinner most days, unless we have sports or activities. Like today we went out for lunch. And so we, of course, didn't do like a lunchtime live, but we typically aim to do them unless our schedule dictates otherwise, kind of with 5 kids and all their sports and whatnot, sometimes that pulls us in a lot of different directions. But yes, I do try to do a live throughout the year. We just came back from our long vacation. We were on a 2-week long vacation. We did 10 days, 10 days camping trip with lots of hiking. And we did some lives camping, but then some of the places, our campsites had no signal. So doing a live was not feasible. And then we were at the last 5 days, we stayed at my sister's lake house, and their Wi-Fi connection was also not very good. And I think it was because there was 30 plus people there and everybody was pulling on it. And it's in the middle of nowhere. So, you can only do what you can do. Here we go. So we're moving these out and making them. Now, traditionally in Sweden, they make them a lot smaller. But you know what? I'm kind of sometimes a lazy cook, and I don't want to take the time to roll out 1,000,001 little meatballs. So I make mine bigger. But I think I'll show you the traditional size, I believe, is about this big. So I'll put it next to it. You see how many? That's like 2 meatballs per size. I don't do that. It's pretty small. I don't do that. I make them big because when you've got to make a lot of meatballs, it's a lot of rolling. You can get these little meatball scoops, or you can even do the cookie scoops. But I just find that it just never works well for me. The meat doesn't ever come out right, and it ends up being more work in the long run. So I just get in with my hands and I do a little roll. And with the bread and the egg and the potatoes, they hold together nicely. And these are really soft. They're not going to be a super firm meatball, which is nice. So they're not going to be tough. I find with ground beef, or if you use breadcrumbs, your meatballs can be more tough and dry. Pork is always so lovely. It's very juicy meat.
You have a question? The onions you cooked up are in there?
Yes. So it was a pretty big yellow onion. So it's probably similar to 2 small onions. But yes, that we minced that up, we sauteed it, and then we added in here. And that's going to give these a really lovely onion flavor to it. which I think is what sets them apart from, like, besides not having like the Italian spices on it, but it makes them very different from an Italian meatball because that onion flavor is so prominent. It's very similar. There's a dish in Swedish, and I might be butchering how you say it, but my grandmother, who hates to cook, she did make it for us a couple times, and it was called hackefleisch, and which really I think means like you beat the meat in Swedish, but that it's very similar to a Swedish meatball, but it's like a burger patty that you eat, not on a bun, but it's just like a patty that you fry up and eat. And that is similar to this, but it has that lovely onion flavor in it too. I'm sure it's probably actually like the same recipe. You just make it in a patty. Okay, let's get these out. But you can see 2 pounds of ground pork make quite a few meatballs. Now, they will shrink up a little when we cook them, but it does make a lot. Let's see, I'm going to steal a little from my big ones. As always, it never turns out where I have a perfect amount left at the end. I always need to go back and steal from the bigger ones to make one more. There we go. This should be good. Okay, I'm going to go wash my hands. And then we are going to pop these in the oven I'm dropping my towels everywhere, with our bread. These will bake up, and then they don't take long to cook. So about 15, 20 minutes max. But we can, while we're over here, we can take a peek at our rolls. They've got about 10 minutes left on them. But again, they're starting to get that kind of golden brown, but it will get much more rich. I'm going to rotate my rolls here because your oven tends to be much hotter on the back side, and this will give a more even bake. Here we go.
You have a question? And that's ground up pork?
Yes, ground pork. Which, if you're trying to be budget conscious, ground pork is actually probably the cheapest of the ground meats that you can get. It's really reasonably priced, which is nice if you want to be budget conscious, but it's delicious. And there's so many things, like we're doing Swedish meatballs with it, but I also make like teriyaki meatballs with it, where you can do like an Asian themed with the ground pork, or lettuce wraps with it. I'm gonna give these a little stir, but these are gonna cook them a little bit longer. We want them to be nice and tender where we can pop right through them with a fork. Okay, let's get, I'm actually gonna be using, this is what we cooked our onions in. I'm going to be using that to make our meatball gravy. But let's get on with our Brussels sprouts and bacon. I love Brussels sprouts and bacon. It's one of my just favorite side dishes. I'm going to use a ½ pound of bacon, and we'll use the other half for another meal another day. Going in with my kitchen shears because it's the easiest way to do it. Just get in there with your hands with a quick wash. And we're going to just slice these up. Now, I will say kitchen shears, invest in multiple pairs of them. I use mine all the time. And I got so annoyed with my scissors and my kitchen shears disappearing that when I was at IKEA, like last year, and I saw them and they had a bunch on sale for $1.99. And these are the $1.99, and they cut great. I bought 6 of them because I was like, we need to have lots of kitchen shears so that when my kids steal them and then inevitably lose them because they do not return them to the place that they took them from, I will always have them. And if you have young kids, I use kitchen shears to cut up their food instead of knives. It works so much easier. Okay. Let's get our bacon sauteing up. And this is what makes the Brussels sprouts amazing. We'll actually fry it in the bacon grease, which will give a nice saltiness to the Brussels sprouts, but are just so good. So we're going to let them start to kind of cook up here. And then I've got my Brussels sprouts. And this is one of those things where I love Brussels sprouts, but they are a pain. What we're going to do is we are going to quarter them. So I cut off their little top and then I quarter them. That way when they fry up, they kind of fall apart on their own. And you don't have to do the crazy work of like de-leaving them. I remember one time my older sister, she made this like sriracha Brussels sprout dish. And she was like, I need you to de-leave these Brussels sprouts. And I was like, I can't just cut them up. No. I had to peel off all of the leaves for Brussels sprouts for like 40 people. Never again. We just quarter them. It makes it easier. You have to kind of cut them. You could have them, but then the problem is if you have them, you're still going to sometimes get that tough center. So quartering them, I found, is the best way that works at getting the best flavor out of them, and also being able to cook off that more, I would say, like bitter flavor that comes with like cabbages or Brussels sprouts.
You have a question. What seasoning do you use for your meatballs?
For my meatballs, I keep them really basic. Garlic, salt, and pepper, but a lot of the flavor comes in from the sauteed onions. So it's going to be a very savory garlic, salt, onion, and pepper dish. There we go. So we're going to get these through. These are really tiny Brussels sprouts. Sometimes I'll get the ones from Costco that are like practically a baby cabbage. They're so like big that I have to cut them into like 8. So if I have one this small, you can just have it and it will work just fine. You just don't want to have any really big pieces to it. But they're delicious. And if you didn't know how Brussels sprouts grow, they're not like little baby cabbages. They grow on a big stalk and they've got little balls all around them, all in there. And so it's kind of a really interesting, they look really foreign on it. But these will go great with our Swedish meatballs, our kind of boiled potatoes, and our gravy that we're going to make here in a little bit. With them being when you cut them this small, they don't need to saute up as long, which is nice because it allows the leaves to stay a little bit more crispy and tender versus getting soggy if you use like bigger leaves or like cabbages. But they are a lot of prep work. There we go. I wish you can buy shaved Brussels sprouts, but I find those are too leafy. Sometimes I'll do 2 at a time. Let's give our bacon here kind of a quick little stir up. And since this doesn't seem to be a super fatty cut of bacon, I'm going to add in a little bit of butter to it so that it crisps up nicely. So sometimes if you've ever cooked bacon at home and it more like burns to your pan and it doesn't get really crispy, sometimes you just have a leaner cut of bacon and it doesn't have enough fat in it to kind of fry it in its own fat. So I have found, and I know this sounds crazy, but if you add a little bit of butter to it, you're going to get that perfect consistency, that nice crunch on it, if you happen to have one of those leaner cuts of bacon, which is, I know, kind of like an oxymoron because bacon's not lean. Okay, let's get these guys done. That way we can start kind of cooking them in. Some of my kids, they're like, oh, yes, I love Brussels sprouts and bacon, as in I love eating the bacon out. But these are, for those of you guys who kind of know my husband's palate, these are one of the few vegetables he does like to eat. He loves Brussels sprouts and bacon, which is so funny because I really had to get him on him to try him and give him a fair try. But the bacon, I feel like, gives them such a nice savory flavor, and it really complements their, I want to say that cruciferous flavor. I was talking to my sister about it. I never say the family that these come from correctly, like broccoli, cabbage. It all comes from the crucifers, which just sound like I'm saying them wrong. Here we go. Now we've got a good amount of fat in here. And that's, you can see there's enough in there for it to start crisping up versus just burning and sticking to my pan. Here. And I will say, when it comes to cooking, or when unless I need a thick cut of bacon, I always prefer the original style cut because I find that thick cut bacon does not crisp up. It remains chewy. So it seems more like a pork jowl versus a bacon. So unless I'm using something where I want a thicker consistency to it, I use just the regular cut of bacon so that I can get a nice crisp on it without getting the chewiness. We are down to the last few. A lot of work for a little bit of reward, but delicious. Just imagine having to, this is probably maybe a pound, not even like a half a pound of them at Thanksgiving, because I always make this as like a side dish for our family. We always have it there. Just imagine like quadruple the amount of this, maybe like 5 times the amount of this, and having to prep it. It's not fun. Here we go. But if I've ever known our Thanksgivings, we're a little crazy. We did 5 turkeys this last year at Thanksgiving. And we have this crazy tradition in our family called the pickin' turkey, where we have this person who delivers these fried turkeys to us. And we pick the meat off of 2 of them as an appetizer. It's a crazy thing, but it's delicious. Let's check our rolls. And we're going to see how they're looking. They are looking good. So I'm going to grab my tongs or my trivet here. So here we've got this nice golden brown color to it. There we go. I'm going to leave my meatballs in here. But this golden dark brown color comes from the honey, the sugar in it. Oh, let me turn that off or it will beep at us. From the honey in there, that sugar kind of caramelizes on the top and gives you a golden brown color. Because if you look in between each roll, you see it's a very pale color. So if I were not to have brushed them with anything at all, your rolls would have that pale color to it. But that honey butter gives it more of a, like that golden brown color, which this is always more appealing and is more delicious. Okay, let's brush them. This is that honey butter we had left over. And we're going to go bring it over the top of them so that it can ooze down into there. And this will just give you that nice little flavor on it. That first coating, we put on, it gives you that nice golden brown color and a little bit of a crunch on the top. And then this is where you get that rest of that delicious honey butter flavor.
You have a question about how many people are at Thanksgiving?
Between mid 30s to 40s. It really, that's about it. Some years we have a little bit less because not everybody comes every year. But yes, 30, 35, probably, yes, around that one. It's a lot of people. And it gets kind of crazy here. Or it's not at my house, but we host some people here, but it's at my parents' house who lives like 3 miles down the road from us. So it's quite the ordeal, the event. It's the one time my siblings all try to get together. And I will say, it's so much fun. I grew up, so I'm technically the youngest of 10, but I have 6 full siblings and then 3 half siblings. These need a little bit longer. I want to be able to swish my fork all the way through them. And so it's a big one. So it's just my full siblings there. They come for Thanksgiving. But I have 5 kids. Another one of my sisters has 5 kids. There's a lot of grandchildren, or my mom has a lot of grandchildren. There's a lot of cousins. So it's just a lot of fun. I'm going to add these guys in here. These are going into that bacon grease. And then towards the very end, we'll add a little bit of garlic salt, but you're not going to need much salt because, again, that bacon already has a lot of salt in it. But I'm just going to stir it around and make sure I coat every one of the little Brussels sprout halves with it so that we get that nice flavor in it. Okay. And now I'm going to make our gravy. Let me grab I need one of these for this. And I'm going to use some of my starchy water from the potatoes in here, and that's going to be a nice kind of thickener into our gravy, but I'm also going to make a roux. So I'm going to take about a cup and a half. We're also going to be using some cream in this, but you can see the water's got a little brown coloring from it. That's going to have the natural starches from the potatoes in it, which will help thicken up our gravy as well. I'm going to start, I've got 2 tablespoons here. We're going to melt that down. And our gravy is really, really simple. Cream, beef bouillon, mix with our water, flour, and that's really all it is, but it's just so good. Let me grab my flour. So we've got our flour here. Once the butter is melted, I'm going to get my whisk out. We will make a roux. And if you don't know what a roux is, grab the whisk I like. It's where you take butter and flour, a little, so I've got 2 tablespoons of butter, probably use about a tablespoon or so to 2 tablespoons of flour. We're going to whisk it together and it's going to thicken up. A roux is a gravy base or your gumbo base, and the longer you cook it, the browner it gets, and that's how you can get those brown bases in gumbos or your gravy. But it's going to be delicious.
So you have a question? Have you made a video for chicken and dumplings?
I have a video for chicken and dumplings because I had somebody request that a long time ago. And we did make it, I want to say it's back in the spring. So maybe in February or March when we made it on there. But we do have one there. You'll just have to search for it on the link on our page. But that was, I will say, I hadn't made chicken and dumplings in a long time when we did that video. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I forgot how good these are. Okay, we're going to take our beef bouillon here. I'm going to do a big kind of heaping spoonful. This is going to be about a tablespoon. And it's going to go, I'm going to put it into my broth here. And I'm going to turn my butter down to real low because you don't want it on too high. I'm going to dissolve that beef in here, that beef bouillon. And I will say beef bouillon works better than beef broth because you get more, like you can add more of the bouillon to get more flavor. And then we're going to put in that's about a tablespoon. I'm going to mix it up and then I'm going to see how it looks. And I'm going to start with a tablespoon. I might add a little bit more for our kind of our gravy here. Now, if you continue to cook it like this, you can cook it until it gets to a darker brown, and that is it's called a brown roux, but that's what you use to make your gumbos. You know how they have that brown sauce in it, or like crawfish etouffee. You can do that. Is you simply take your butter and your flour and you keep cooking it until you have a really rich color to it. Then you add your liquid. I'm going to add a little bit more, probably about a teaspoon or so, to make kind of the base of it. And this is going to be able to absorb a pretty good amount of liquid for here. So now I'm going to add my beef bouillon here. And I'm going to add a little bit at a time. And we're going to mix it up. You see how it's instantly thickening up? I do have mine on low. You can see just how quickly it works, especially with the hot liquid in it. So I've got here, and then you just got to whisk it. Now I'm using a silicone coated whisk because these are non-stick pans, and I don't want, if you use metal, you can risk scraping it. Now these are the hex clad pans, so they are supposed to be scratch resistant, but I I don't risk it. Now I'm going to add a little bit more broth, but I'm going to add a little bit of my cream now. I'm going to start with 1/4 of a cup or so, and then we'll mix it up. And this is going to give you, and now the gravy is it's a blonder gravy in here. So it's darker than like a sawmill gravy, but it's not as dark as ones that you use like Kitchen Bouquet in, which has a deeper base.
Someone commented that you use the Gordon Ramsay can.
Yes, that's what I said. I'm like, I had gone through a lot of, I've used Teflon, I've used the Cuisinart nonstick, and I always ended up scratching them, and so when we had to remodel our whole kitchen, I was like, after we did it, because we remodeled it, not by choice, but it was a happy ending in the end. But I was like 7 months pregnant with my last baby, and I had like complications. And I was like, I deserve something. I gave birth in a house that had no kitchen, laundry room, or dining room. So I was like, I'm going to get myself, because they're expensive, but they are so worth it. They are. I would buy them again and again, which is why I've added them to my Amazon storefront, because I highly recommend them. I've had them for 2 years now, and I've not scratched them.
You have a question. Would you ever get an induction stovetop?
The problem is, if I got an induction, half of my pans that I would not work on it. When we turned our office into a mini kitchen during that time, and my mom had an induction plate that she let us use, so we kind of had a hot plate. Only a few of my pans worked on it, and I will say it cooked great. It boiled water super fast, but it like half of my pans did not work on it. So if it's something you want to do, you got to think about, okay, am I also ready to invest in all new pots and pans, because they need a certain type of metal. It does work great. And I will say it cooked really fast, but that's my only drawback.
You have a question. What are you seasoning the Brussels sprouts with?
A little bit of garlic salt, and that is it. The bacon grease in there will give it that nice, lovely flavor, so you don't need to add anything else to it. And we are just about done here. Let me check my potatoes. They should be done now. So my goal is I should be able to push through my potato easily with my fork. And as you can see, it smashes right through. That's the best way to check it. You'll know that they're nice and tender. These were I used for that little teeny potato earlier. So I'm going to just strain these. Now, we're just going to eat them plain like this, but you could also smash these potatoes and fry them up, which I find is delicious as well. That's sometimes I do a smashed potato, so I'll boil them, then I put them in a pan that has butter, and then I smash them down and I crisp up one side. So I love these little potatoes because they're versatile. I'm going to put a little bit of butter in there and put it around, but we have that gravy that will go on it, and then I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of garlic salt. Ooh, I lost the potato. Don't, it's hot. There we go. It rolled. I'm going to sprinkle this, and then I'm going to go grab those meatballs out of the oven because they are going to be ready. And then dinner is ready. Okay, so let me grab. Got that. Here we go. So here are our Swedish meatballs. You can see they've sweated out. I can tell they're done just by looking at them. But a clue is, you see I used cream in it, and when it cooks it out, it sweats it out, but keeps it nice and moist and tender. Now, one way, so we would always like make them ahead, and we did them at this stage. And then what you do is we'd like seal them up, and then it was time to serve them. You take them out and you fry them up in a pan with some butter real quick to get that nice golden edge on them. But they're delicious regardless. Okay, let me got a spatula here, but these are just nice. I'm going to mix them around. Get them moving with the grooving. But you see how these are much bigger, but they're like a good sized meatball. Growing up, they were tiny. Okay, let's serve up dinner tonight. Let's start with our Swedish meatballs. I'm going to put out, we'll do 5 because they're just so addicting. And then we've got our baby potatoes that are so good. I've got butter and garlic salt on them. One jumped away. And now what I do with the gravy here is I drizzle mine over both the potatoes and the meatballs. So you get all of that kind of gravy on it, and it's so good. And I just think it's the best way to have Swedish meatballs. And then we'll have our Brussels sprouts and bacon. You got to have a little green on your plate. And then let's not forget our delicious, beautiful sourdough yeast roll for our bread. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for our family, and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of the recipes, you can just search for what we cook for, and then you can rewatch that video and cook along with me at home. And we also have a link to our Amazon storefront. I have all of the pans and cookware that I have in there. So I have my 12-inch frying pan, all of my baking sheets, all the utensils I use in there, if you want to check that out as well. But again, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe.